We are just a few days away from the start of the VCT Masters Bangkok tournament, so it's time to look at all 8 teams and rank them from best to worst. Obviously, this is kind of a hard power ranking to do. This is the first international tournament of the year, so we haven't seen any of these teams face off against each other in international competition. We've only seen them in their own regional kickoff, so it is a very hard thing to read, but we're gonna try our best. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So this is the board we have today. We have all 8 teams hidden right now. We will start from 8 and end at 1, which means that the first team we are talking about today is Team Liquid. So Team Liquid, very perplexing team, and the fact that I'm putting them at the last spot means that I am yet again underrating them, because this team I think is the most surprising team to be attending this tournament, getting knocked down to the lower bracket early in their kickoff tournament, but then going on a very impressive run after that, having some very sloppy games here and there, but they ended up making it to Bangkok by stomping Heretics, and then they nearly swept Team Vitality, but then Team Vitality reverse swept them. So if they had won that match, if they were able to win one more map, maybe we're talking about them as a top 3 team, but that is not the world that we're living in. And for me, I just feel like this is a team that is on a heater right now, but I don't know if it's something that's going to be the most sustainable. When you look at the stats of Kiko, for example, he was like plus 111 during that kickoff tournament, which is just insane. That's such an anomaly of a stat that I just can't believe that it's going to continue. But they do have some very impressive players on there. Nat seems to be a pretty solid IGL right now. Patatek's playing well. Kiko already mentioned how good he's playing. Camo is being pretty solid as well. So maybe they can go on a dark horse run, but especially going up against EDG in their first match, it's definitely a tough hill to climb. Moving on to number 7, we have a team that I was hoping to put a lot higher just based off of the roster they have, but it doesn't seem like things are going super well for them right now. At number 7, we have T1. Now T1 definitely have a very good team on paper, and they showed promise during that kickoff tournament. I think my main concern about this team might end up being the coaching. We've had Meteor speak out about the coaching, about how he feels like there are problems with it, which is pretty surprising to hear from your brand new star player, but there are some kind of roster juggling that T1's doing as well. Putting Carpe in, taking Carpe out. Carpe's the coach. Nope, he's actually the Smokes player. We have Sylvan in and out. Meteor's underperforming. Buzz is doing pretty well. Stacks as an IGL, up and down results. But the thing is that even though they were having all these problems, they still won enough to make it to the grand final of the kickoff tournament and qualify for this tournament. Something that if they hadn't had done, if they were sitting out this tournament, I think there would be a lot more questions about this roster. But as it stands, there definitely seems to be some problems with this team right now. So while I do think they have the talent to be in the top 3 of this tournament, I'm just not seeing it right now. Maybe there needs to be a coaching change at some point, but we're not going to see that right now. But maybe the coaching staff and the leadership of this team get things going and they go on an impressive run. Moving on to number 6, we have the only team that went through the winners bracket of their kickoff tournament and did not win the whole thing. I'm of course talking about Trace Esports. So I was thinking of putting Trace lower. I was considering putting them at the number 8 spot, but that would have been mostly just based off of the past of how they've done in international tournaments, and they've only been in one, and that was Champions, where they did have some pretty impressive upsets. And while they did end up losing that grand final to EDG, they still performed very well in their own kickoff tournament, knocking Edward Gaming down to the lower bracket in the first place, and then winning their respective matches to make it to this tournament. In my way too early VCT 2025 predictions video, I did say that this team would be here, so I ended up being right of that. I'm 2-2 for the China region. Don't ask about EMEA, but overall, Trace, they definitely look better than they have before. Hebei seems to be performing quite well, and when this team isn't finding their own players, they definitely look pretty solid. Fane was doing well in the kickoff tournament as well. This team definitely has some solid pieces here, so they're going to want to prove that China is not just a one-team region, because that narrative is definitely still out there. Moving on to number 5, we have a team that has been at international tournaments before, but hasn't been able to win one, and that team is DRX. So this is the lowest I have any top seed in this power ranking. The rest of the teams below DRX were the second seeds in their regions, so maybe I'm putting DRX too low. There's definitely an argument for that. With how strong this team looked in their own Pacific kickoff tournament, finally winning their own regional trophy, there's definitely an argument to be made that this team could end up taking the whole thing, but overall, I just don't trust trust it. DRX just always seems to find a way to come up short at these international tournaments. They have spots where they look really good, like in Champions last year, while they missed out on the first two international tournaments of 2024. They made it to Champions and had a really good start, but then kind of fizzled off by the end. They did have a decent placement overall. I think they were 5th to 6th. And while this roster is a lot different from the Vision Strikers roster that was on this organization for such a long time, and despite having world-class talent, could not get it done. While this team is much different now, only having one player from that roster, I just kind of feel like the same things are going to repeat. The good sign with DRX is that their rookies have looked incredible for them so far. Hayumin had a very good kickoff tournament, and Freen was the best Taeho in the Pacific region. Mako and the rest of the roster were playing great too, and despite having a pretty close couple maps there in the grand final, they still ended up getting it done. They did not choke it. Maybe it's the fact that the coaching staff is still the same, but I just don't trust this team at the international level. They could very well prove me wrong and go on a run. Any team in this tournament has a realistic shot at winning, but for now, I just don't see it with this team. I would rather underrate them right now than overrate them right now, so we will see where they end up. Moving on to the number 4 spot, we have our first Americas team showing up, and that is Sentinels. So Sentinels being right in the middle of this ranking, I felt was a fair place to put them. Their kickoff was overall pretty up and down. They had a close match against Loud. They lost to G2 twice. But one thing that I loved from what I was seeing of this team is how much they were improving throughout the tournament. While their new additions did need some time to get acclimated to this new team, as soon as they got going, they were looking great. John QT is still an amazing IGL, and he looks to be a very solid Taeho player. Zekin, while his numbers were a bit down from previous tournaments, still looked incredible and won this team some pretty important matches. Zelsis, Nere, and Bane all looked a lot better at the tail end of the kickoff tournament, and this team ended up looking very dangerous. They definitely could have won against G2. Maybe if they had the map bans, they would have been the one that winning, who knows. But overall, even though they weren't the top seed out of the region, Sentinels always seem to perform well at international tournaments. It's very rare that they have one that they don't do well at. Just last year, they won Madrid, the first tournament of the year, and then they got top 4 at Champions, so they always seem to be dangerous at these big moments. This is an experienced team that always seems to get up for big games, and I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. There definitely could be an argument for them to be top 3, but for now, I am putting them at the number 4 spot. Moving on, we have a team that is going to look to win back-to-back international tournaments. I am, of course, talking about Edward Gaming. Now, EDG are a pretty curious team right now. They had a very good run at Champions to win that tournament. They were not the favorite going into that, at least a lot of tier lists that I were seeing were not putting them as the favorite, but then they ended up going on an insane run, beating some very good teams to get there, and then having one of the craziest grand final matches that we've ever had and winning the entire thing. And then they go into kickoff, they get knocked down to the lower bracket. It looks like they're maybe about to lose. They had to win in an overtime map to not get kicked out, but then they 13-0-2 teams on Haven and have some of the most insane attack stats that I've ever seen. So I think it kind of felt like maybe the team was kind of coasting a little bit, not really taking their opponents seriously. And then once the going got tough and there was a realistic shot of them not attending this tournament, they cleaned up their game and locked in. And then they ended up doing what they always do and win the China region. So definitely very impressive of them to, get to that point of almost getting kicked out and finding the resilience to not let that happen. And even though they might be running old comps, they don't look as good as they used to, at least in that Champions winning roster. This is still the team that won the most recent international tournament and still looks very good. The roster has some absolute demons on it. Kane needs no introduction. Nobody has been insanely good for them. Chichu is fantastic. They still have Simon. They still have Smoggy. This team should be incredibly dangerous at the international level. Do not take them lightly. So that leaves our 1 and 2 spots. So as soon as we reveal the number 2 spot, we're gonna know what the number 1 spot is, but we'll continue to do it in this order. And at the number 2 spot is Team Vitality. I'll give you guys time to type in the comment section NA bias, NA Glazer, G2 fan, G2 Glazer. Just go ahead, take your time. You good? You done? We're all set? All right, let's go. So for Team Vitality, them and the team that is at the number 1 spot, it's incredibly close. There's definitely an argument for this team to be rated as the number 1 team heading into this tournament. They have an absolutely deadly roster. Durka is making Fnatic look like a fool. Les is a clutch god. Safe is making duelist IGLing work. Trix and Kicks still fantastic players. This team is incredibly dangerous. All the worries in the offseason of this team potentially not meshing well has completely been blown past. This team is easily the best team in the region, and I think EMEA's best chance to finally win a tournament again. It's been since 2023, the Fnatic roster winning back-to-back. It's been since then that this region has won an international. So Team Vitality absolutely could do it here. They look incredibly dangerous. There really isn't enough good things to say about this team. Their map pool is incredibly good. They're good on attack. They're good on defense. They have some amazing players. This team absolutely is a contender. I just feel like I want to see how this team does at the international before I call them the best team in the world right now. This team is built to win championships. This is the first one of the year. Can they get it done? They definitely have a really good chance. As I said, they are very close to the number 1 spot in my eyes. I just feel like in the number 1 spot, G2 deserves to be there. This team is fantastic. When you look at how G2 have evolved since the beginning of the 2024 season, it's been very impressive. They made their way through Ascension. They had a pretty mediocre start to the 2024 season, and then they made it to Bangkok. They get top 4, then they win the Americas region. They didn't have a good champions, but then they got Jawgemo. And even though Jawgemo hasn't been the best player on this team, in fact, in terms of stats, he's kind of been their worst. He has given this team such a confidence boost with the crazy plays that he does, with the insane moments that he has, which has given the other players the room to find the superstar potential that they always had. Trent finally is reaching that potential. I really hope that we continue to see it from him. Looking really good on Taeho right now. We also have Leaf looking like Chamber is the best agent in the world when he's playing him. They have potentially the best IGL in the world in Valen. They also have Jonah P, who is a very underrated piece of that team. This team, wherever you look, absolutely looks fantastic. I know a lot of people don't like this team, and I understand that maybe their style of play isn't the most exciting, but it's getting them wins. They went undefeated in their own region. They only dropped 2 maps in the entire tournament. They have a lot of really good maps. This team absolutely is primed to go on a run. And as I reminded people in my previous video about Bangkok, the Americas region usually wins at least 1 tournament, and it's usually the first one. Americas has won every single year in the VCT, especially in the franchise region, and it's usually that first tournament. Sentinels last year, so can G2 continue that trend? We will see how accurate this power ranking ends up being. This could be, in any sort of order, and you can make an argument for it. But that's all I have to talk about today. Let me know in the comment section down below, what are your power rankings? What did you think of mine? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.